All right. When it comes to Butler, now let's talk about first off when he came into the process. And we know he was brought in kind of late into the offseason in July. And, him and Tony, it was kind of they're going to be their job to work on the passing game together in unison. And one of the things that when listening to him back then, and I talked about this when he came on board, was he had a very unique situation to be in. He was coming out of, straight from the NFL in Buffalo, not coaching. And it was kind of one of those situations where him and Rat Rule happened to be in the same place after, the whole debacle with the former defensive back coach. Things kind of came to fruition quickly there. But one of the things that a lot of people don't remember is John Butler had to come in and really kind of learn. And he talked about how he wanted to learn the players and how he wanted to learn, the 3-3-5 before he could actually coach the players. So he came in July to be a defensive backs coach and had to learn the type of players he had to learn the skill sets that they had, but then also had to kind of learn the entirety of the 3-3-5 defense, which isn't a defense that's run at the NFL level, especially as a base defense, right? So he comes on, has to learn those things, and he says he wants to learn that before he starts coaching the players. Well, this is July, August, September coming on quickly. Now, we come into the season and we look at our defensive back room, and Sierra Wright was a late addition to the defensive back room later in the season. And Sierra Wright was coming off of, his time at USC, where he hadn't played football for a little bit. The season prior, I think he played up until about week 8. And, there was some conflicts there with him and the staff. And then he hadn't played football for a little while. So, he comes on and he, kind of gets better as the season goes along. We saw him play good in the scrimmages, stuff like that. But let's go through who kind of the secondary was when he came into the season here. And the secondary, we came in with one surefire starter, Gifford, right? And as, for people who've seen my post games and film breakdowns and stuff like that, Gifford was the one surefire starter coming into the season. And when Gifford this year was kind of a little bit, for lack of better terms, he was lost out there. A lot of times when Nebraska would get beat, especially cover 2, cover 3 on those route concepts, it would be Gifford losing his eyes. And Gifford would really, really get drawn down very easily on certain route concepts, the Ohio concepts and stuff like that. We saw it against Ohio State and we saw it against Indiana. And both of those were on Gifford. One of those, they didn't score a touchdown on. Luckily, we got a sack. But the deep touchdown up the seam against Ohio State, that was Gifford. And so with Gifford being our one kind of starter that came back, but was also one of the people that had the biggest, I guess, issue this year in terms of being able to play deep safety. It happened again in the Iowa game. Bly Hill got beat deep on that pass, but Gifford was supposed to be the center field there. And Gifford gets drawn down. Bly Hill gets beat over the top. Bly Hill playing his first action of the season in the Wisconsin game in the second half. Then comes in the Iowa game. Or maybe that wasn't the Wisconsin game, actually, my bad. So coming into the season, we had Gifford as the one surefire starter. But then we go through the rest of the defensive back room here. And, we had Bly Hill coming into the season, who was projected to be our cornerback too. Everybody knows how I feel about Bly Hill. I love him. 6'3", long, rangy type of corner, one of the guys that I really, really liked out of the portal. But he got injured before the season. Like I talked about Sierra. Sierra hadn't played football for a little while. So our safeties were this: Gifford, Buford, Hartzog, who was having to potentially play either safety or corner, depending on how the health went along. And then, of course, Bly was supposed to only be out for the first couple weeks of the season, ended up being a lot longer. And then Deshaun Singleton at safety. Cornerback-wise, we had Tommy Hill, and Tommy Hill was really, really good this year at points. Hartzog and Tommy Hill had put some weight on, to be better in run stop and stuff like that. We did see, Tommy Hill a little better. But yeah, just kind of Tommy Hill was his own unique situation. Then we had Hartzog also at safety and corner listed as a second cornerback here. Bly Hill hurt, Sierra Wright late addition, and Jeremiah Charles, who was just a really, really raw athlete. Okay, so you have a group of people there and a group of players that we knew the veterans were going to have to step up for this room to be good. We knew depth was an issue before the Blyhill injury, and then Blyhill went down. So then depth was really an issue. And then so as the season wears along, you have a small group of people that you're trying to rotate through these positions. And, a lot of these guys haven't been cross-trained at both positions. So the reason I'm saying this is because Butler, this is why I like to look at track record more than just one individual experience. Butler was in a bit of a situation here where he came in and he had to really kind of make things work and kind of, patchwork this together in terms of this defensive backfield, learn the system, learn to coach these players, learn their skill set, et cetera, et cetera. Mike, appreciate you becoming a member, man. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate you as always. Like I said, if you want to become a member, they're at the bottom of the page there. And you can become a member at any tier. Really, really helps me out, like I said. But drop your comments still in here. We're going to continue to go through this. But let's talk a little bit more about Butler and what he has kind of done in terms of his versatility across the multiple of schemes that he's played, coached in, played in and stuff like that. So when he was at Penn State, there was kind of a he's running the 4-3, the 3-4, later on the 4-2-5, and then at Nebraska, the 3-3-5. So Penn State, it was predicated on his style was predicated on kind of emphasizing, linebacker play and kind of run stopping, gap sound, gap integrity. And, he was introducing a little bit more blitz packages when he was brought on as the defensive coordinator or was put as the defensive coordinator on that Penn State team, and used those defensive backs, and their versatility as those kind of blitz scheme packages and stuff like that. And so, some of the players that he developed there, Adrian Amos, being the one that has mentioned him specifically in terms of, developing him mentally and technically, in terms of being a good, really good NFL player. And then Jordan Lucas, of course, became an NFL defensive back under him as well. Now, I'm a Texans fan, so I remember John Butler very well from when he was with the Texans. And specifically a player I remember him developing into a really, really good player, A.J. Boye. Not sure if that's a name a lot of you are familiar with, but A.J. Boye essentially was an undrafted free agent, and he coached him up to basically be a Pro Bowl player. And one of the reasons I know that it was a lot due to his coaching is because, he coached him up and he became an excellent player with the Texans, got this huge contract with the Jaguars, had a great season with the Jaguars, and then kind of stepped back from there, right? So A.J. Boye was a guy who shined under John Butler and really, was able to use his skill sets to his advantage. And that's one of the other things that I think he does a really good job and that people don't know just yet is the fact that he does know how to get the best out of players and play to their strengths. And so A.J. Boye was another one. And then Kareem Jackson, K-Jax, became a very good hybrid. He could play safety, he could play corner. K-Jax was one of those very, very hard-hitting type of guys. And his versatility, he turned him into a really, really big-time hybrid player and a guy who was really aggressive and downhill. And then you go over to the Bills defense. The Bills, they run nickel packages, 4-2-5. They run a lot of sub-defensive packages. They rotate a lot of different things out there, and they really emphasize the versatility and disguising things and have guys moving all around, especially at the NFL level, and he had a defensive back room with skills there, Tre'Davious Wright, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, like those guys, you be seeing what he can do when he has guys with that level of skill set to be able to come in and rotate those guys around and really kind of disguise things with that movement. So, there's kind of a few of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on with John Butler that really make me think that he's getting a little bit of a rough, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for, reputation in terms of just what he was able to do last year, but trying to look past just that and as it, as a whole and as a unit. And we'll get into some of the other coaches here in just a second. 2013 is his first year. Butler's defense ranked 29th in the country. Again, it was 11 years ago. Yeah, higher than Pelini. Yeah, okay. So that was, so not bad there. And even if you look back at his Penn State, that was 11 years ago. That what I went through there with his coaching versatility and what he's done with multiplicity of schemes and other things like that. The college game has developed a lot too, and so has he as a coach. You can't just expect, to look at something he did 11 years ago and be like, well, this is what it's going to be now, and then also, we use a little bit of cognitive dissonance here, but like, okay, look what he did with our defensive back room. Look how bad our passing, defense was. We got to kind of look at these circumstances in their entirety. Massive underwhelming hire. The defense better not be the reason Nebraska struggles next year while the offense takes a leap. It's not the sexiest hire. I will say that. It was not the sexiest hire, but I think it's because a lot, again, a lot of people, and the sexy hires don't always work, as we know. So Nebraska's been a place where it has been sexy hire. Matt Rule coming in. Matt Rule wasn't the sexiest hire either, but for the most part, he's done what he's been supposed to do so far. It took us, year one improved, year two got us to a bowl game, and year three's when he's taken that leap and he's putting he knows his tail's on the line. So, why is Foley still employed? That is a very good question. I have no idea why Foley is still employed right now. Try to stay positive. I'm not impressed with the hire. Hopefully he surprises me. Butler ran a 3-4 at Penn State. I'm sure our new playbook will be 3-4 multiple. I'm thinking it's probably going to be more so like a nickel, maybe 4-2-5 with the 3-4-4-3, because the 4-2-5 is kind of a hybrid of the 3-3-5 and the 4-3. So it's going to be a multiple scheme, multiple front, which is something we really, really need. But we saw as Tony White, as the season went along against Indiana, we had the 3 down linemen and the run game kind of dominated us. And then against Ohio State, we ended up putting 4 hands in the dirt and kind of just really reinforcing that front 7 or that front line. And we're able to stop the run. So what is so horrible at Butler? Looking at strictly points or yards, I'm talking power index. Yes, 100%, Robbie. What do you think of the FCS guy, Coles News? Yeah, I might have a chance to get into him a little bit later. Not convinced Butler will be a failure. What I'm angry about is Rule taking another gamble with an experiment coach. With what's on the line next year, we're not in a position for experimentation. And I think that's another reason why he brought on Snow, right? And I saw a comment earlier saying that he brought on Snow because he feels like he's not confident in Butler. And I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I think Matt Rule is very much about relationships, and he's very much about, cohesion and kind of the reason why he brought a lot of people with him from his other locations, which Snow has been with him in multiple locations and probably more so than anybody, is because they speak the same language, right? And with him, he kind of wants to be kind of the overseer of everything and kind of have his hand in certain details of what he wants to have his hand on. So he has to have that trust. So maybe he thought, having a guy like Butler, who's kind of new to Rule, one of the newer guys in terms of what he usually brings with him, and then have a guy who he knows very, very well to kind of help oversee that entire operation. And I think that's where we're going to kind of get that's why I'm saying, like, it's not just Butler running this defense. It is a groupthink type of deal where you're going to have a lot of hands in the basket and a lot of people coming up with different ideas and different concepts to try to make this work as a unit. Excited to see how he does. He has wanted this position, so he's got to be hungry for it. Motivation important. And he's a good coach. He's a good coach. No matter what anybody says, he's a very tough-nosed, hard coach. But he gets the most out of his players. I will say that.